What if the world's top AI company is actually just barely holding it together? What if all this tech that feels like magic is running on a business model that makes zero sense? And what if the company that kicked off the entire AI craze is racing the clock, torching billions just to stay afloat? Today we're going to dig into OpenAI. Not the flashy demos or the research headlines, the actual numbers, the stuff buried in spreadsheets, the eye-watering losses that would make even the boldest startup founder sweat, the real story behind Microsoft's so-called investment, and the brutal math that could turn the king of AI into a last-minute clearance sale. I'm Emma Chamberlain, and this is the infographics. Here's why OpenAI is bleeding cash, and why the ChatGPT you know might not last. Let's start with a number that should make every investor, employee, and user pause. By 2026, OpenAI is staring down yearly losses of $14 billion. That's every single year. Not million, billion. By 2029, they could blow through $115 billion in total. $115 billion. Let that sink in. Here's the kicker. The product actually works. ChatGPT is a legit breakthrough. It writes, it codes, it reasons, it creates. Millions use it daily. The tech is a massive hit by any standard. But those bills? They're tied to hard, real-world limits most people never consider while typing into a chat box. This is where AI's financial reality hits. There's something called scaling laws. If you want to understand where all the money goes, you have to understand these laws. In regular software, the math is simple. Want a better app? Hire more engineers, clean up the code, tweak the algorithms. It's all about people, and people costs scale up in a straight line. More engineers, more money, better product. Every company gets this. AI? Totally different story. AI follows mathematical rules that decide how smart the tech can get. And these rules are expensive, painfully expensive. The basic idea? If you want your model to be twice as good, you can't just double your effort. You have to pour in way more computing power. It's a raw numbers game. Every small jump in intelligence takes a massive leap in spending. Take GPT-4, for example, the model that really launched this new era. Just training it, feeding it data until it learns, cost around $100 million in computing power. For a giant tech company, that's a big bet, but still doable. That's just the price of playing at the cutting edge. But the next generation, the models coming in 2026 and 2027, are playing a whole new game. Each training run could cost over $1 billion. That's 1,000 million for a single experiment. We're talking about a single training session costing more than some countries make in a year. And it only gets crazier. You can't just train a model once and call it a day. The moment you stop, your competitors are already building the next big thing. OpenAI is stuck in this never-ending race, spending billions just to stay a step ahead. And their rivals? Sometimes they're giving similar tech away for free. That's where their business model starts to look shaky. The costs are tied to real things: electricity, silicon, hardware, all getting pricier and harder to find. But they can't just hike prices because the market is packed with competition. Free tools from Meta, powerhouse offerings from Google, startups popping up everywhere. The math is ugly. Costs are exploding, revenue can't keep up, and the cash is slipping away. Let's get into the hardware, because this is where things get real. To crunch all this data, OpenAI needs the world's most advanced AI chips. Think NVIDIA's Blackwell B200s. These aren't your everyday processors. Each chip runs $30,000 to $40,000. And you can't get by with just one. If you want to train a frontier AI model, you need a cluster, a real monster of a setup. We're talking tens of thousands of chips, all hooked together with lightning-fast connections and cooled by some seriously high-tech liquid systems. Just the chips alone for one data center, that's hundreds of millions, sometimes billions of dollars. But the sticker shock doesn't stop there. The real problem is how fast this hardware gets old. You know how a factory can keep the same machine presses for decades? Or delivery trucks might run for 20 years? Forget it. AI chips age in dog years. The minute a new generation drops, about every 18 months, your current setup is already behind. So OpenAI ends up swapping out all those chips every 18 months to maybe 3 years, just to keep up with Google and Meta. Imagine if FedEx had to buy a whole new fleet of trucks every year and a half, because the old ones couldn't keep up. That's what AI companies are dealing with. It's a wild, almost absurd economic treadmill. And those billions OpenAI spends on hardware, that's not a long-term investment. They can't stretch the value out over a decade. The moment a faster chip is announced, the old ones are barely worth scrap. The value just evaporates. If all that wasn't enough to make your head hurt, there's another, even bigger bill. Electricity. Take Project Stargate. You've probably seen headlines calling it a giant supercomputer. In reality, it's a $500 billion bet on AI infrastructure. $500 billion. That's not a typo. To get a sense of scale, Stargate will need 10 gigawatts of power. That could run millions of homes. We're talking the same output as several nuclear power plants, all just to feed one computing project. Why does this matter for OpenAI's finances? Because these costs aren't going anywhere. They're locked in, and they keep rising. You can't build the next wave of AI without this kind of power. But the real choke point isn't just paying the electric bill anymore. It's the grid itself. There just aren't enough transformers, transmission lines, or capacity. The old utility infrastructure can't keep up with AI's hunger for power. So now, OpenAI finds itself negotiating for direct hookups to nuclear plants and sprawling solar fields. These energy costs set a brutal baseline for how much it costs just to keep the lights on. Think about that. Every single time someone fires up ChatGPT for free, OpenAI pays for the electricity, and their fancy chips wear down a little more. The more users they get, the more money they burn. It's a business model straight out of an economics nightmare. Every free user literally costs them billions. So, if OpenAI is bleeding billions on chips and electricity, how do they even keep going? How do they pay thousands of employees? That's where things get interesting, and a little weird, with Microsoft. You always hear about Microsoft pouring billions into OpenAI. The headlines make it look like they're just handing over suitcases of cash. But what's really happening is a lot more complicated. Most of Microsoft's investment stays right inside Microsoft's world. Instead of cash, they give OpenAI cloud credits. Picture a giant gift card, but you can only spend it inside Microsoft Azure. On paper, OpenAI can count those credits as money raised, which makes their finances look better. But you can't use Azure credits to pay the rent. They're only good for running AI models on Microsoft's cloud. So, the investment just cycles right back into Microsoft's revenue. Their cloud numbers go up, their stock looks better, and OpenAI gets the computing power it needs to survive. But here's the real danger. OpenAI can't pay its people with Azure credits. That's the catch. And it's a big one. When OpenAI wants to hire a top-notch AI researcher, they're forced to shell out $1 or $2 million a year. In cash. Not cloud credits, not funny money, real dollars. The same goes for their fancy San Francisco office, legal bills, marketing, and all the endless costs that come with running a company. You can't pay rent with a coupon for Azure compute time. This is where things get weird. Microsoft makes headlines with a $10 billion investment, but OpenAI doesn't see that as cash in the bank. Most of that money is really just credits for Microsoft servers, a pile of digital vouchers that don't pay salaries or electric bills. So every few months, OpenAI has to hustle for more cash from outside investors, venture capitalists, sovereign wealth funds, whoever will pick up the tab for everything those Microsoft credits can't cover. If those outside dollars stop coming, there's no backup plan. It's an instant cash crunch. OpenAI could have more computing power than they know what to do with, But if they can't pay their top talent, companies like Google DeepMind or Anthropic are ready to swoop in and snatch them away. Still, the money keeps flowing in. Investors are betting big on what OpenAI could become. Take March 2025. OpenAI pulled off a jaw-dropping $40 billion funding round, biggest private round ever, even outshining the monster IPO of Saudi Aramco. But that comparison is wild in itself. Aramco makes hundreds of billions every year, and they have something real. Oil fields you can actually measure and sell. OpenAI? They're burning through cash at a mind-boggling rate, and they've never turned a profit. Their whole value comes from brains and code, their models, their research, and their people. And none of that is untouchable. Anyone ambitious enough can try to build something similar. So what does all this mean for OpenAI's future as its own company? Honestly, it's not what most people think. Investors are dumping historic amounts of money into a dream, a market that isn't really here yet. For OpenAI to ever live up to its trillion-dollar hype, it can't just be a cool technology. It has to replace a whole mess of cheaper, specialized tools that companies already rely on. Right now, most businesses split their AI budgets. ChatGPT for this, Gemini for that, open source models like Llama when they need privacy. OpenAI is betting billions that someday everyone will need their specific, all-powerful AI. But there's just no proof that kind of demand is coming anytime soon. This is a leap of faith, not a sure thing. And here's where the business model gets dicey. In software, companies survive by gluing customers in. Think Salesforce, where moving all your data and custom setups is a nightmare. Or Apple, where switching means losing your apps and that seamless setup. Netflix locks you in with shows you can't stream anywhere else. OpenAI? Not so much. Users are ruthless. If someone else offers the same answers for less, or for free, they'll jump ship without a second thought. No lock-in, no special data format, no sticky ecosystem. Nothing's keeping people from leaving. Right now, about 75% of OpenAI's revenue comes from subscriptions like ChatGPT Plus. But word is, more people are canceling. The initial buzz is dying down, and for regular folks, the free version is good enough. They're not paying. Big companies are even harder to lock down. Only about 20 to 30% are sticking with OpenAI's API for the long run. Plenty are switching to open source options to keep their data private and cut costs. And since there's no exclusive tech or sticky network, switching to the competition is a one-day job. And let's be clear, the competition isn't just annoying. It's a real threat to OpenAI's survival. Meta didn't release its Llama models for free out of generosity, or because they wanted to democratize AI. Let's be real, it was a shrewd move. When Mark Zuckerberg hands out a top-tier AI model for nothing, he basically tells the whole market, this is the new price. Why on earth would developers pay for OpenAI's API if they can just download something similar from Meta and run it themselves, only paying for electricity? Meta can play this game because their real business isn't selling AI models. It's selling ads. Every time they improve Llama, they make their ad targeting on Facebook and Instagram sharper, and that's what brings in the billions. For Meta, AI is just another tool to boost their main product. For OpenAI, AI is the whole product. They don't have ads or some other cash cow to cover their losses. They're fighting to build a business in a market where the biggest players are willing to lose money just to keep them from getting a foothold. And time's running out fast. OpenAI is getting squeezed from every direction. Up top, they're up against giants like Microsoft and Google, who have bottomless wallets and make money from all sorts of businesses. Down below, there are leaner competitors like Anthropic and Mistral. Anthropic's especially tough. They run a tighter, more efficient operation, focusing on safety and reliability, spending way less than OpenAI does in its frantic dash toward AGI. Then there's the talent war. Google DeepMind keeps luring away OpenAI's best researchers, So OpenAI has to offer huge stock packages to keep people around. But those stock options only mean something if the company's value keeps climbing. If that stalls or drops, those brilliant researchers, the only thing you really can't replace, could walk right out the door and join a rival. And as if burning billions, slashing prices, and bleeding talent wasn't enough, regulators are starting to circle in both Washington and Brussels. In early 2026, the FTC in the US and the European Union both ramped up their antitrust investigations into the Microsoft OpenAI partnership. They're digging into whether Microsoft's investment is really just a sneaky way to control OpenAI and dodge merger laws. If the regulators decide to pull the plug or force Microsoft and OpenAI apart, OpenAI loses its biggest financial safety net overnight. No more cloud credits, no more sweetheart deals. Just OpenAI, alone, staring down a mountain of bills. And let's not forget the geopolitical mess. Tighter export controls on advanced AI chips mean OpenAI's global market is shrinking. At the same time, new AI safety rules in the US and Europe are piling on compliance costs. Now OpenAI has to hire armies of lawyers, ethicists, and safety experts. Jobs that don't make any money, but are now absolutely necessary. You really see how risky OpenAI's spot is when you look back at other tech companies. Take Uber. Sure, Uber lost billions before going public, but they were building something real. Drivers, riders, routes, a brand. Nobody could copy that overnight. Look at Tesla. Years of struggling to turn a profit, but they used their money to build factories, a network of charging stations, and a brand people actually cared about. Real, physical stuff. Now, look at OpenAI. They're burning through billions, but there's no physical network, no assets you can touch. Their entire factory is rented computing power, running on pricey chips from NVIDIA. Chips that become obsolete faster than you can blink. And unlike Uber or Tesla, OpenAI actually loses money every time someone asks their AI to do anything complex. Worse, there's nothing stopping those users from jumping to a competitor tomorrow. So OpenAI's basically gone all in on one last massive bet. They're racing to build AGI, an AI that can think and learn like a human, before the money runs out. This isn't a careful, long-term business plan. This is a desperate Hail Mary thrown from deep in their own end zone with the clock about to hit zero. If OpenAI really manages to build a model that's smart enough to do what human experts do, replace software engineers, analysts, lawyers, doctors, researchers, the whole lot, their current losses just wouldn't matter. Money would pour in, fast. They don't just imagine an AI that organizes your inbox or drafts emails. They're thinking much bigger. Entire departments wiped out. AI running strategic planning, writing perfect code, making breakthrough discoveries in science and medicine, faster than any human ever could. If they pull it off, they could charge whatever they want. Their debts? Barely a blip on the radar. But here's the catch. Nobody knows when, or even if, AGI is actually coming. Maybe next year. Maybe 10 years from now. Maybe never. It's the biggest unknown in their whole plan. And every month this takes, they're burning through more than $1 billion. If it takes 5 years instead of 2 to hit that breakthrough, they'll need almost $100 billion just to keep things running. No one's handing out that kind of money overnight. That's not venture capital. That's government scale spending. So what happens when the money's gone? You might picture a dramatic implosion, headlines, bankruptcy, chaos. But most of the time, these things end quietly. Odds are there won't be a spectacular collapse. Instead, OpenAI will just get absorbed. If you look at the numbers, by the middle of 2027, all the cash they raised in 2025 and 2026 will be almost gone. At that point, they have two options. First, they could try to raise another giant round of funding, but it'll be at a much lower valuation. That would wreck employee stock options, tank morale, and basically announce to the world that OpenAI, as an independent powerhouse, is done. Second option, sell. And let's be honest, Microsoft's the obvious buyer. Maybe the only one who could actually keep things afloat. Microsoft already runs all of OpenAI's systems on Azure. They've woven OpenAI tech into Bing, Windows, Office, the whole ecosystem. Plus, Microsoft has over $80 billion in cash. They're basically the only company on Earth that can handle OpenAI's mind-boggling losses and keep the research going. For Microsoft, buying OpenAI means locking down the crown jewel of the AI age, the engine that could drive the next era of computing. For OpenAI's backers, it's a fire sale. Nowhere near what they dreamed of, but at least they get something back. The tech survives, even if the company doesn't. This is where the startup era in AI ends. OpenAI showed the world that with enough computing power and money, you really can build smarter AI. But they also showed that you need a budget the size of a small country. AI has gone industrial. Success isn't about clever code or a smart new algorithm anymore. Now it comes down to who's got the biggest data centers, the most power, the fastest hardware supply chains, and the deepest pockets. It's a game for giants. OpenAI kicked off this whole revolution, but they just can't keep up on their own anymore. The independent pioneer that captured everyone's imagination? Probably about to get quietly folded into the same corporate giant that helped bankroll them from the start. There's a grim kind of irony here. The company that started as a nonprofit, vowing to make AI safe and available for everyone, might end up as just another division inside one of the biggest, richest corporations on the planet. The dream of an independent, world-changing AI startup is likely finished. And honestly, this might be the best thing for the technology itself. Tucked under Microsoft's wing, OpenAI's researchers could finally breathe, free from that relentless pressure to raise money every quarter. Microsoft's profits from cloud and software could cover the massive expenses. The best people would stick around for steady stock packages. The long, unpredictable road to AGI could keep going, without a financial guillotine hanging over every decision. But it also means losing something big. It's the end of that wild idea where a small, driven group of smart people can turn the world upside down on their own terms. The end of OpenAI's scrappy, nonprofit beginning, the thing that made them stand out, gave them their mission, and set them apart. The end of doing things their own way. Maybe that's the real takeaway from this whole AI revolution. It's not that technology is magic. It's that it's stubbornly, unavoidably physical. Code can't fix everything. Silicon, electricity, servers, those things come with real, massive costs you can't escape. Startups are great at shaking up the industry, but let's be honest, the giants just have resources no small team can touch. OpenAI kicked off a race that's already changed the world, but they might not be the ones crossing the finish line. Thanks for sticking with me through this deep dive into the hidden economics behind AI here on the infographics. If this video made you see ChatGPT, AI, or the business of tech in a new light, hit that like button. It really does help the channel, and it lets us know you're into this kind of deep dive storytelling. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to the infographics and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next investigation. We've got some great stuff coming up. More looks at the hidden forces shaping our world, the real price of innovation, and the companies quietly building our future. I'd love to hear what you think. Did you know about Microsoft's cloud credit deal before today? Do you think OpenAI can stay independent, or is it just a matter of time before Microsoft takes over? What happens when the money finally dries up? Drop your thoughts, theories, and questions down below. Seriously, we read every single comment. Your takes are what make this community awesome. And hey, if you know someone who uses ChatGPT all the time, or someone who still thinks AI is just magic code floating in the cloud, share this video with them. They need to see that every question, every answer, has a real-world cost, and those costs are piling up fast enough to reshape the tech world for good. That's it for today. I'm Emma Chamberlain, and this is the Infographics. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and never forget, behind every breakthrough, there's an economic reality that hype just can't erase. Catch you next time.